Good afternoon, and thank you all for your time today. I'm John Fanguy from CyberRes, and it's November 19th, 2021. Very quickly, I'm going to talk to you about CyberRes as a company, our history in federal, as well as globally delivering cybersecurity products for more than 3 decades. We'll talk quickly about the overall product portfolio families in the Zero Trust Lab realm that we are here to demonstrate. I'll talk about a couple of products, and then we'll do 2 product demos. So very quickly, MicroFocus is a $3 billion software company. We're top 10 in the world, pure software companies. Cybersecurity is a very significant focus for us. We have over 800 security patents. We have 1,200 plus dedicated security personnel. We're, for some of our products, 9x Gartner Magic Quadrant, and in total we have about 9,000 employees. Specifically, CyberRes is our cybersecurity portfolio products grouped into 4 major pillars, including IAM, DataSec, SecOps, and data security. Here are the functional area coverage for the Zero Trust Lab spectrum of, if you will, functionality across data, device endpoint, network and environment, application and workload, user visibility, analytics, automation and orchestration, governance and scoring. You'll see we have a number of products which do deliver world-class industry-leading capabilities in these areas. And we're going to drill down into 2 specifically with product demos, Fortify, which many of you I know have probably heard of, as well as Arcsight, which many of you have heard of, but probably don't know the latest and greatest, which is 3 very interesting acquisitions and integrations we've done with other products in the cybersecurity realm. So to set the framework, I just wanted to, in addition to the Zero Trust 7 categories of capabilities, just talk about our coverage across the executive order. Across the 8,000 word cyber executive order from May, there's 7 specific technology capability callouts, and we cover all 7. If your view of the world is from CISA CDM, this is how our products line up to help you understand who's on the network, what's on the network, what's happening on the network, and how is data being protected. And then finally, TIC 3.0, which in some aspects is the genesis of a lot of the functionality that we're talking about here in the Zero Trust Lab. These are how our products map to traffic management, traffic confidentiality, traffic integrity, service resiliency, and timely and effective response. All right, so let's talk specifically about the product families that we have: Voltage, Fortify, Arcsight, NetIQ, and Interset. Voltage is our data security product, and that's one product where we're going to talk conceptually, but we won't be showing a demo today. Fortify will be doing a very detailed demo today. Arcsight will be doing a detailed demo about the security operations capabilities. And then finally, NetIQ is our IAM product. I just wanted to point out a few of the key features around these products before we jump down into the demos. And I wanted to start out with Interset, which we've now rebranded Arcsight Intelligence. This is a UEBA industry leader that we purchased and integrated into most of our core security products about 3 years ago. And the differentiators are that Interset/Intelligence, the new name, give you day 1 anomaly detection with 450 plus built-in unsupervised machine learning models to identify available entities. And that capability grows over time once it's present in your environment. Secondly, our SOAR capability, which is from a company we purchased called Etar Labs, delivers automated responses to 90% of events through over 120 infrastructure and security tool integrations. All right, very quickly, we're going to talk about data security, and I'll build this slide out very quickly and move on to the next slide, which is that Voltage is a secure data platform which delivers stateless key management, encryption, hash, and tokenization for your critical pieces of data. And I'll show a slide in there that helps you understand that this is different than data at rest or data in transit. This is data in use. So effectively, we're taking at a very simplistic level, a social security number in your database and pseudonymizing 4 or 5 of those characters to ensure that even if the data is compromised and breached out of your environment, the data effectively is worthless to the hackers. Voltage is a market-leading FPE solution, which is used by 3 out of the top 5 credit card processors in the US. And you see here the NIST, ANSI, and IEEE certifications and relevant standards, which we help to develop as a company. All right. I want to now, because I know you're here to see product demos in detail, I want to focus on Fortify. Fortify is 9X Gartner Magic Quadrant leader in AppSec, and we cover DAS, SaaS, IaaS, software composition analysis, as well as mobile. On the left-hand side of the slide, you see across the globe, across our 10,000 or so customers, the stats for where we are with regard to different industries. We're used throughout federal. In total, our products are used in over 300 federal agencies right now. Some other relevant stats are 100% SCA true positive rate in the OWASP 1.2b benchmark. We have a 95% on average reduction in false positives. We support currently 31 programming languages and growing. We have over 1,000 vulnerability categories that we automatically detect, and we cover more than 1,000 APIs. So with that, I want to turn this over for our software demo. Hale, are you with us?
I am.
Thank you. All right, and I'm going to stop sharing and then allow you to share, okay?
Sure. And thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. Can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Just let me know.
We see it now.
Great. Just move this. Okay. Yes, thank you, John, and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Hale Nematolahi, and I am a senior security solutions architect with Fortify Product Portfolio here at MicroFocus, working and supporting our federal customers. So what I thought I'll do today is just have a few slides about what is Fortify and why is application security important. And then I will jump into showing you a few different components of our solution, because our solution is, as John explained, we have SaaS, DaaS solution, and just a very comprehensive, and we can definitely do a more detailed demo for anyone who's interested at a later date. So in terms of what is going on in application security, so what we see every day and what we hear is there are more and more hacks happening, regardless of the fact that every organization, they have basically created a fortress around the network in terms of security to protect the network and the applications. But unfortunately, there are still holes and vulnerabilities in the software, in the applications that are being built and deployed, and hackers, they still find their way in and they can exploit the software layer. One of the reasons also for the increasing number of these hacks and the frequency is because of the application delivery method has changed in terms of, rather than having 1 or 2 releases per year, now applications are being deployed over 100 or even more times over the year. Also, open source software is widely used in application development, which they have vulnerabilities, therefore putting applications at risk. So this fast-paced application development basically either results in not doing any application security testing or pushing it to the end of SDLC, which basically leads us to deploy these applications that are insecure and creating and making the software the primary attack vector. John talked about cyber resiliency, but what is cyber resiliency when it comes to application security? This is showing the evolution of app security resiliency. So we've moved past different stages or transition periods throughout the years, like the era of compliance, which was basically the era where we wanted to check the box just to say that we actually did some app security testing. And now we're really starting to come out of this digital transformation stage where we're really trying to figure out how to shift application security to the left, and also what is a true DevSecOps. And today, when we talk about modern application, we're basically talking about DevOps, and that's what modern application development is. And each stage, they present their own challenges, and the stage of DevSecOps is no different. And what we see in terms of the challenges or the trends are, these are some of them in terms of the application security tools. They need to become embedded as part of the DevOps tool chain. Otherwise, they are not going to be used and they won't be a successful software assurance program. Containers are becoming very big because of the promise in terms of easier implementation of the software and easier management of the software. But again, the security of these containers are very important, and basically they need to be secured. And it goes also to infrastructure as code security, that adoption grows, therefore security of it becomes important. Few other things in terms of cloud native applications, they are basically becoming more and more prevalent, and they, in terms of their security, you need to have more continuous application security approach. API challenging in terms of what to do for the security of it, doing DAST solution with functional testing, maybe it can help. I talked about open source, and I'll show that open source security in the types of vulnerabilities, and then how you can really combine and correlate the results when you're doing static and dynamic testing. And what do they all mean for Fortify? So Fortify Portfolio is a set of capabilities and solutions to deliver basically security, application security, so we can help our customers build secure software. So the stack, if you look at it, is built from the foundation of our software security research team, and it rolls up to the different scanning capabilities in our solutions. So one is the static code analyzer, or Fortify SCA. This is, again, a SaaS solution looking at the source code. John mentioned we scan over 27 languages today. We keep adding more and more languages. It is used earlier on in the software development lifecycle by developers, so they can scan the source code that they are writing, so they can fix and remediate those issues much earlier. There is an integration ecosystem around Fortify SCA, which are basically providing developers a plugin for their integrated development environment or IDEs they are using, integration with different CI/CD servers, and again, any tools that developers are using today, so it can help them through the process of integrating a static scan as part of the process and be able to do the remediation faster. Then the next step of security testing is doing dynamic testing, and this is our Fortify Web Inspect or our DAST solution. This is the web application security testing solution, or your mobile app security testing solution, and even web services. The focus here is not scanning the source code. This is a running application. You can point Web Inspect to the HTTP or HTTPS of that running application, and Web Inspect can mimic attacks on those web applications and find security vulnerabilities. Then in terms of what do you do with these results, where do you house them, how do you put these results together? Software Security Center is the vulnerability management dashboard that we have. It houses the results from both SCA and Web Inspect, and even third-party tools like Sonotype, and I'll talk about Sonotype. It provides a single pane of view to assess the risk of the applications that you have. It provides you that historical insight to see how these applications are doing over time in terms of the security vulnerabilities, the risks and trends associated with these applications. If you're interested in generating different types of reports, especially like compliance reports, like FISMA reports or DISOSTIG reports, you can get all of those from Software Security Center. Software Security Center is also the orchestration platform that we have to help you schedule, manage, run the scans that you have either on the static side or dynamic side, and also helps you review the scan results using Software Security Center. So it becomes your collaboration tool at that point as well. I talked about the risk of using open source components. We have a partnership with Sonotype for software composition analysis. The scan results from a Sonotype scan can be imported into Software Security Center, and again, providing you that single pane of view for all the application security testing. And then reviewing the results and the risk coming from static, dynamic, and also from your open source components. All our solutions, they are provided on-prem. We provide our solutions in containers. We also do have a SaaS solution called Fortify On Demand. This is for our customers who do not want to manage basically installing the software, maintaining the software, running the scans. We can provide that service to them through our Fortify On Demand. We do have a FedRAMP certified Fortify On Demand for our customers in the federal space. So you can see we have end-to-end app security solutions and flexible in terms of how you want to implement your software assurance program. I talked about the integration ecosystems. You can just see at the high level, we do have native integration plugins for a lot of products out there, but then also through our REST APIs, you can actually create the integration that you need for products that we don't have that native integration. I know John touched on this very quickly. With Fortify products, what we do is we look for security vulnerabilities in your software, either is in your source code or it is in your mobile apps and your running applications. This knowledge comes from our security research team. And basically in terms of the security contents, this team is responsible to support and find vulnerabilities in different languages that we support, different versions of these languages, the frameworks, the APIs around it. Combined, we can find over 1,000 different categories of vulnerabilities, and they are also responsible to map these categories of vulnerabilities to industry standards like FISMA, NIST 853, DISOSTIG, and others. So with that, I am going to jump and show you, again, different components of the solution. And just, I don't know if you have questions that you would like to ask, just feel free to ask any questions. So one of the components, and again, quickly, I will go through these pieces. I talked about earlier on for developers to be able to kick off a scan from their integrated development environment or their IDE so they can do the remediation much faster and quicker and earlier on in the development lifecycle. As an example, this is Visual Studio, and Fortify, I have installed the Fortify plugin. So as part of that plugin, what happens is when you run a scan as a developer, you can see the scan results in terms of what were found in the application, in the source code that the developer have been working on. What happens is we do prioritize these vulnerabilities, And for each finding, we provide detailed information in terms of what is this finding. So we provide a detailed information for each finding, provide information, put a context behind it. Where did we find it in your code? Examples of what you're doing is similar to this example. And then recommendations, or basically all the remediation guidance for developers so they can understand better on how to do the remediation. We also provide with the data flow analysis, or basically the execution path for developers, so you can just follow the trace. They can just follow the trace here so they can get a better understanding in terms of why did we flag it and where in the source code exactly we find this issue and where do they need to fix it. So again, high level, this is very earlier on for developers as part of what they do on a daily basis. They can also run a scan in Fortify with Fortify IDE plugin and be able to remediate it. And John, how much time do I have? I'm sorry.
Oh, yeah, you've got plenty of time. You got about 20 more minutes.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Okay, perfect. So then jumping into software security center. So again, if you remember, software security center, as I mentioned, is our vulnerability management dashboard. So it houses the results from the scans that you've done, either with our static solution, either with our dynamic solution, or even with Sonotype, bringing the results in software security center. So you can see at the high level, based again on your role, then you have access to specific projects. Here as the administrator, for example, I can see all the different projects we have in our portfolio. At the high level, I get an understanding and total number of applications that we have in our portfolio, how many lines of code have been scanned, how many files have been scanned, how many issues haven't even been reviewed after the scans have been done, how many issues are still open, how long does it take to review and remediate these findings after a scan is being done. You can create these red flags, so basically it goes off in terms of what is acceptable after you run a scan, in terms of how many days before you start reviewing the scan results and how many days before the developers need to actually remediate these issues. And again, you can just look at each one of the applications and projects at the high level here in terms of, for example, this application, how many files have been scanned, the number of lines of code in this application. This is the bug density, basically number of issues per specific number of lines of code. So you can basically compare in terms of maybe languages, because some languages by default, they do have more vulnerabilities than other languages. So you can get a lot of good information from here. And then number of issues that are still open and they haven't been basically reviewed. And you can just slice and dice this information any way you want. For example, this is our portfolio. For example, I want to see what are the different languages that are used when we are doing development. And then you can just focus on, okay, what are, for example, we're using Java, which applications they are written in Java versus which applications are basically written in .NET. So it will just provide you any kind of information you need in order to see in terms of the risks and where do you sit in terms of vulnerability remediation. The other thing is the orchestration platform, where we call that Scan Central. So again, this is our orchestration platform to help you basically schedule, manage, run the scans. And then once the scans are being done, then you can review the scans either in Software Security Center or for example, as a developer, as you already saw in the IDE, like your Visual Studio. So for SAS, which is our static solution, and the concept is the same thing, you can create different pools and look at the pools as your buckets where you actually will deploy sensors or the scanner engines throughout your data servers that you have. And based on the availability of these sensors, then you can push specific scans to specific sensors, or you push specific scans to basically any sensors that are available. And then you'll see that here the scans, when did that scan happen? For example, who submitted that scan? When did that scan come in? How long did it take to run the scan? And then the results will be uploaded again here in Software Security Center to review it. And this is on the SAS side or static. And then the same concept for DAST, which is our dynamic solution. So again, the same concept in terms of you have your pools or the buckets where you can have sensors or the scanner engine deployed in those sensor pools, and then you schedule your dynamic scans based on the availability of the sensors or any ones that are available. And you can see the scans here, for example, when did these scans run and if they were successful or not, number of issues that were found. You can create the schedule. So for example, I have a few schedules here for my dynamic scan that maybe for this specific application, I want the scan to run every day, or I have another schedule for another application that once a month, it will just kick off a dynamic scan on it. And with the deny intervals, for example, when is, if you have blackout times where at specific times, maybe during the day, you don't want the scan to be done. So you can either stop the scan or the scan can pause between those period of times, and then the scan will kick off after that period of time is done. So again, after the scan is done, the results will be pushed again here in Software Security Center, where you can start reviewing the results. In list of the applications that I have here, this is a specific application I have. It is actually a Java application, and you can, again, at this level, start reviewing and looking at the results. So high level, what you can see is what are the number of issues that are open coming from different scanner engines, from static, from Sonotype, and from dynamic, which is WebInspect. So it provides you the high level information. You can just go into number of issues to see, for example, how many critical issues do you have when you did your static scan. You can just come in the audit page here and say, okay, these are my results from static, from Sonotype, and from WebInspect. And in terms of what do you see in each one of these results is the list of findings and vulnerabilities that we were found here. So what we provide you is, for example, here is the category of vulnerability. So it's an SQL injection, for example. This is the source file. This is the line of code it was found in. It came from SCA, and the criticality of it was low. Or I can just click and open any of these issues. It will show you what I showed you very briefly in the plugin for Visual Studio in terms of this is where we found that vulnerability. In terms of information, what is this finding? So we explained that. We put more detailed information behind it and a context behind the code that we find it in, which is your application, and remediation guidance, again, detailed information about that. So this is on the static side. You review this finding, you can just assign it to a developer, you can push it to your defect tracking system at this point. So then your developers, they can get notified to do the remediation. Looking at dynamic results, a little bit different, but the concept is basically the same thing. So what we provide here is, again, is the category of vulnerability. We're saying this is coming from WebInspect. The criticality, for example, of this cross-frame scripting is low. And the difference here is because this is a dynamic testing, we are going to show you the HTTP request and the HTTP response. And also we provide you the exact same information in terms of what is this finding, what is this category of vulnerability. So we provide a lot of information here in the overview, detailed information, where was it found in your website when we scanned it, and then how to remediate it. So this is coming again from the dynamic scanning. And the nice thing again is you're seeing everything in this one single pane of view. And the last piece is Sonotype. So this application did have open source components. I also, as part of the scan that I did, I also did a Sonotype scan of the application to scan the open source components, and the results coming back, as you can see, they're coming back from Sonotype, and also taking advantage of the CVEs, the common vulnerability enumeration. So again, in one single pane of view, you can see all the different vulnerabilities that we have here. You can see the results, they look a little bit different because at this point, what we're showing you is that vulnerable OSS coming from Sonotype. This is the jar file that vulnerability was found, but the concept is the same in terms of what is that vulnerability description, what is it, why is it vulnerable, and then recommendation in terms of, okay, there is, for example, for this specific jar file, there is no non-vulnerable version to use. So basically you need to reconsider and decide what else can you use or what mitigating controls you can put in place. So you can see this information here, and then more information in terms of if you want to do research and go to CVE or the CWE, you can do more research here. So as you can see, again, in one view from this user interface, you can see all the vulnerabilities and all the risks that you have in the source code, in your running application, and also in the open source components that you have. And one last thing is, if you decide, for example, that you need to generate PDF reports for the team members, for management, we do have a series of predefined templates that you can take advantage of. For example, this is a NIST 853 report that I generated based on this application. And you can see at the high level in terms of the issues that we found in different controls for NIST 853. The report said we failed because there are all these open issues. In some of these controls, these are the priorities for them. We break down those issues in terms of each one of these sub-controls, where they are, and you can see that, and then more detailed information, where in the code, where in your web application we found them, and how to remediate those. So this is one example of generating and having actually like a leave behind report. And then also the same concept for getting a bill of materials from your Sonotype scan that has been done. So it basically provides you the same type of information in terms of the violations. Where have these violations, where are they coming from? So you can see that in different vulnerabilities and components that have been used. And if I just jump down maybe a little bit, like the licenses for this build report, do you have licenses or not available? And also, again, the bill of materials coming from Sonotype. So as you can see, a lot of information, but really trying to help with pointing where the risks and vulnerabilities are in your software, in the source code, in the running applications, in your open source components, providing you with this one single pane of view to manage, to run the scans, review the results, and then with the plugins for developers, helping them to remediate these vulnerabilities earlier on in the development lifecycle. So with that, I stop. If there are any questions. If not, then
yeah, Leigh, I'll throw a question out there that I think I saw, and that is, what's a typical first step for agencies and federal when they're implementing Fortify? Is it a mass, if you will, existing application software scan? Is it implementation into a team of developers on an active development project, what's a typical path?
Exactly. So with Fortify, you can, again, if you remember, it's static and dynamic. It's new application development. Obviously, you want to incorporate security and embed security from the beginning of that application development. So again, getting developers involved, getting the build master or the CI masters involved in terms of integration and being able to kick off the scans as part of the builds that you have. And then the security team, obviously, to help with determining what needs to get remediated. On applications that are in maintenance mode, you want to make sure that these applications that are still running in production, if do they have risks or not, then you want to also do the scanning of those, either static or dynamic or both. And again, there are different phases. Source code scanning, that's SCA earlier on in the development lifecycle. With Sonotype, that's when the open source scanning is also being done. And then when the application is ready to be tested, it is in the test environment or in the staging environment, that's when you want to do the dynamic testing. And that's when you use Web Inspect, because again, you're running the application, you're testing it, you're doing all different types of testing at that point, but you still want to do the security testing. So I would say for security, it's basically, it's continuous from development when you get to test.
Thank you. Any other questions out there?
We can throw them in the chat too, if you'd rather type them.
Very good. All right, and we're a couple minutes early based on our plan to demonstrate Arcsight. I just need to make sure that my Arcsight expert is logged in.
I am here.
Wonderful, Keith. Thank you. I'll turn it over to you.
All right, just John, if you could confirm that my screen is up.
Yes.
All right, so real quickly, just briefly, for all those who may or may not be with Arcsight, I kind of just wanted to circle back and kind of go through in a basic understanding of all the various components of Arcsight, as its platform and how it's morphed from those who have previous experience and all the things that have been introduced. As John mentioned earlier, we've had some acquisitions over time, and those have been integrated into the Arcsight platform. In particular, when we look at from our approach to solving for security operations, we look at it in doing it in a layered analytics approach. By layered analytics, we view the overall problem, within SIEM's security operations is a lot of times people look at, is it just real-time correlation? Is that good enough? Is machine learning good enough? Or can we just use a threat intelligence program in order to go after and look for this data and uncover the things that we need? Our view of it is you need to do all three. So we view it as an and, because each tool does provide value and effectiveness for different portions of that problem statement. So within it, this is where we come with from the topology standpoint is currently we have available as Logger and Recon, which is focused on searching, hunting, and that threat intelligence element to do that search for the unknowns, complete unknowns. As part of that, we look at also as intelligence. That's the AI ML component where we use unsupervised machine learning to go through and crunch through the data. In particular, we look for insider threat characteristics in the activity that we're analyzing to raise up identifiable entities that do strike anomalous behavior, whether it be based on their individual baseline or even compared to their other, what do you want to call it, other like members or groups, people that have the same job functions or machines that should be behaving the same way. And lastly, those that are familiar with Arcsight, this is ESM, real-time correlation, the detection, alerting, and powering all that. We have the data platform, the security open data platform, which is about the ingest and collection of this data, which is ultimately built on a big data solution on the back end. So a lot of transformations have happened to Arcsight over the course of the last year and a half. As to steal a phrase of a coworker, it's not your grandfather's Arcsight anymore. And when we start looking at the UI, you'll start to see how it's changed from those that are familiar with the way Arcsight had been. But within this, we're talking about scaling, capabilities of getting into the hundreds of thousands of EPS processing, efficient use of storage and archiving of data on the back end, so that we can help reduce the footprint overall for the total encapsulation of the data over time, so that we help reduce those costs operationally. And then lastly, centralizing the reporting, as well as the introduction of a SOAR component, which comes free as part of it. We view SOAR as a critical component of security operations. So as such, it's included right there within the platform, as well as the overall community space being available to anyone that's out there, whether it be the CyberRes attack site where it has all the content laid out, how we map things, the marketplace for free downloads, to content, to resources as they keep coming out and be made available to everyone. So that's all I wanted to touch on. And with that, I'm going to dive into the application and kind of walk you through everything. There's a lot in here. So along the way, we're going to I'll create some pauses as we kind of go through some core elements. That way, if there's any questions, we can field them while we're in those relative sections. So the first part we're logging into, this is Fusion. I'm going to take you through like what an analyst would see when they come into the environment, right? So very quickly, I can see what's going on from all the cases that are happening within the environment. This is a visualization of the entities that the Ueva component, the machine learning intelligence, that has actually raised up and identified, particular users that are of certain risk, as well as what is going on from the cases. How fast am I looking at things, everything. Now, this is a full open, KPI capable, that you can build out whatever metrics make sense for you as an organization in order to visualize and make available to drive, behavior, business decisions, or just to be informed of what's going on within the platform. So as an analyst, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead over into here, and this is the SOAR component, right? So this is where I'm going to start my work for the day. As starting to work, you can see there's a number of activities that are going on here, various cases. Those cases have been brought up and bubbled up to me from the platform. These are things visually, I can see who it's assigned to, who's working what. I can see that there's the status of it, that it's open. You can see that there's a number of data elements here. Part of the other features that we have within the SOAR is I think you saw earlier where there was a number of cases here that had the number of entries. Let's see if I can find it again. Looks like it eluded me. We can do, and I'm not seeing it here. So I'm going to do, there's some consolidation that happens. And this number right here, I can consolidate alerts so that if you have loose content, which can happen within organizations, we can actually squish all of those down to just one case, right? For an analyst to go respond to, and it's controlled, it's configurable so that we can streamline the impact on the analysts in order to effectively be able to respond when we get what we call alert storms, or help eliminate that alert fatigue. When there's repetitive alerts coming into the environment, we can very quickly consolidate those into a single response, encapsulation, and react to those in a simplistic manner. So within this, you can see I have a red bar here. That's the SLA. You can see that it's actually 2 months past due. This is because of how long this has been out here. But if it was, in line with the SLAs, again, configurable. we would see a blue bar moving over towards the red as it continues to move along those lines. I have the abilities here. These are extracted data points coming out of the alerts from the platform. This would be, for example, an Arcsight correlated event where we saw some traffic that was not to an entity that we anticipated. I have the ability to go and look at any of the individual events, drive down into the details, etc., where I can look at, get more information to make my decision. I have a full historical handling of what's happened with this case. You can see there's a number of automations and enrichments that have happened. Enrichments are activities within the SOAR platform where, whether it be manual or automatic, it has gone to some other application to pull back data. So what I'm going to do is right here in front of you, we're going to go through a process where an analyst say, oh, Joshua Newman, I want to see what's up with Josh. So I'm going to actually go over to my intelligence platform. And here real quickly, I'm going to go and see what has Josh done, and what do we know about Josh based on his behavior, like what kind of risk we have associated from that AI ML engine. So while it goes over there, it's going to come back, and it's already retrieved that Josh has a very high risk. He's at a score of 98. I can see that, you know, he has this information, etc. If I scroll down, I have the details. So informationally, though, I don't have to go over into another platform. I graphically can see what's going on, and I can see that very recently his risk score has gone really high. So there's particular activity that has happened by Joshua that says why this information, you know, has the score has jumped. I can very quickly look over here into the details, and I can see what are all the various data points, the specific details, and notice that we can see that Joshua Newman's doing some things. He's accessing some stuff. He's accessing domain controllers. We have some access outside of normal work hours, etc. So those are the things that help reasons why his activity is getting flagged. So with this, I could take action and I can do some things, such as, you know, isolate his machine. I could disable his account, etc. So there's a number of enrichments that come out of the box. There's about 120 different integrations across 75 different or so vendors where we have integrations to do enrichments and or actions. Real quickly, I'll kind of give you a peek as to that entirety of a list. But everything I'm doing here can be automated, and that's part of the playbooks. So going and do that enrichment, one of the things I can do is, from a very WYSIWYG element, is have playbooks that have logical flow. As you can see, I can split and come back together. Do integrations into email or SMS, if, you know, whatever communication mechanisms, and then we can create the ability to interrogate responses. So if you're in a meeting and you have an email that says, you know, hey, we have something that's severe, can I get your approval? You know, right from the email, you could go ahead and initiate the approval, and we can evaluate that response, and then take the appropriate action through the remainder of the workflow. So here we can see this is the going out to intelligence and actually going and getting that risk score, right? That's one part of the automated process. So everything I'm showing you from a user standpoint, we can automate, that would automatically go through all of this data gathering process, so that when the case is presented to the analyst up front, they have all this information at their fingertips. Now, if the result set is repeatable and we know that this is the activity that the analyst would have to take based on the information, we can of course automate that entire response, or we can initiate manual steps if that's what you want to do as part of, you know, hybrid workflows, etc. So again, all configurable, all available here, and this is the part and parcel with some of the things that are going on within the platform. So I'm going to pivot out of this And let's say we go back over and we look at the Ueva component that we were speaking to. Now that Ueva component has over, like I think John mentioned, over 450 models that are available out of the box. Those get applied. They use various AI ML techniques. Most of them are on using unsupervised machine learning. Now, the benefit of unsupervised machine learning is that if things change, for example, a user changes a position within the organization, I don't have to go reteach how to look for that user. It'll normalize itself automatically based on comparisons to peers as well as that user. So when we get into that type of situation, we can do it very simply by turning down the sensitivity as opposed to having to go retrain a model associated to things. As workforce shifts from whether it be on site to remote, et cetera, those types of dynamics, the tool automatically adjusts over time for that based on behavior. So here, and we're creating a reverse funnel of what to go look for, basically boiling the ocean into 5 actionable risky entities for an analyst to go start hunting, go look at what this entity is doing. So we'll look here on this user, and there's Joshua Newman. Now, some in between when I did the call for the enrichment to now, what looks like his score's gone up. So it looks like there's some other activity that's going on where he's reached up to the top of the threshold. So very quickly, I can click in here and look at what is Joshua Newman doing. So you can see we have a timeline here. I can do selections across the board to change my filtering. I can zoom back out if that's what I want to do. I can also change the threshold of what's being graphed. So if I raise it up to here, it only includes the elements of a certain risk score. And again, like I mentioned, one of the activities that Joshua Newman had was, hey, he was doing something outside of the activity based on the data that was on that other screen in the SOAR tool. And this is based on Joshua's behavior. Joshua normally doesn't, as you can see, is a very normal employee who typically works the 9 to 6 window. For some reason, this activity was flagged because it was performed at like 10 p.m. or 11 p.m. at night. So again, it does the translation into business language. It brings it forward for you. Again, here's that tuning that I was referring to. If I click on here, and let's say I know, well, Josh, after some research, I find out that Joshua Newman he's starting a new position, starting a new contract, et cetera. I can change the anomaly sensitivity down so that the score, when he works outside of normal hours, because that's maybe what he's going to have to do for a while, gets turned down, so I can eliminate some of the risk identification associated to Joshua. Likewise, I can very quickly look at what's the information that went into supporting this. I see the various logs that have been analyzed and were part of raising this entity's, in particular Joshua Newman's score. We take across many of these data elements and look at what's going on. But what if I wanted to go and find out more about Joshua Newman and get a bigger picture of what's happening for Joshua? Like I can see it's coming a lot of his blue coat and windows, so it's a lot of network traffic that's raising his risk score as well as his activity on the network. So I'm going to quickly just go in here and I'm going to go and search on Recon. Now I'm pivoting from the Ueva interface and I'm moving over into the threat hunting platform, the search, the larger data storage, where I can start looking at the data. So here I'm going to do a quick search. It's already built out all the context for me, so I can see it's looking at all activity associated to Joshua Newman. So it's not just the anomalous elements, but now I'm looking across what is all the activity that is going on associated to Joshua Newman. And so I can start to look and hunt for things such as, do I see malware happening? Is there some other activity that I'm starting to sense that is going on within the platform? So here I'm bringing back all this data. You can see I brought back, a number of results. Very visually, I can see here there's a number of activities. If I choose, I can pin columns to the left-hand side as part of my investigation. So say I want to pin these. So as I scroll left and right throughout the remainder of the data set, I can see the values. Likewise, if I wanted to do like a top, like what's understanding going on, from an analytics standpoint, I don't have to go do much. I can very visually see what's the frequency of things happening, what's an outlier, right? So I have, ways of crunching through the data set of the results that are returned. Likewise, I can go look at the bottom results. So very quickly, as an analyst, I can see if there's anything I need to hone in on. Likewise, if I click on any one of these, I can see it informationally, the full breakdown of the entirety of the event across the board. So I'm just going to kind of go through here. You can see there's a number of elements. If, for example, I wanted to isolate just down to this, I can click on the IP address and I can quickly look at do a who is. So there are some functions where I can go and very quickly integrate and look for things. Let me come back to the interface. So I have capabilities to do quick lookups on certain functions, as well as add those to the operators here. So with that, I do also have the ability to export these, of course, to CSV, PDF, and as part of facilitating the sharing within operations is once you uncover these nuggets, the items that are like the smoking gun, we can even do a quick link. This is a copy. A copy is a link to this direct event. So as part of the communication and sharing to say, here's the evidence, here's the information, we can come right back into the system, right to this specific event as part of that collaboration that happens within security operations. So while we're in this tool, one of the other things I wanted to kind of go through is part of the context of the hunt, and if we're doing the hunt not from a starting point like a case, and we're just coming in and looking, the tool contextually helps build out and perform some of the search functions. So if I type a number, it starts to tell me these are the likelihoods of what I'm trying to go look for. So if I put it in a format of like an IP address, it starts to say these are the fields where there's IP addresses are valid. Likewise, we have the ability to go across any IP, right? So if I type in any, you can start seeing that I get any custom floating number. Likewise, I can go across any IP source, any username. So we can go across multiple fields. If I start typing strings, so if I start typing in Joshua, I can see that it has to be a particular string field. So it starts to inform me that these are the string fields where I can go. So rather than typing source username, and I get to the end and I can go and say, okay, what are the operators? And it contextually will show me what these are. I can either select them by going down, or if I choose, let's say, for example, equals, then it's going to say after equals, then what's the syntax of what I need to do? And this is where I can put in my Joshua Newman, et cetera, that we were looking at. Likewise, I could just do a search for Joshua, and it would search for any field where Joshua exists. So I have both free text and the ability to look at the syntax based on the common event format as the data is represented down below here. So these are all about streamlining that process. I can tie in external data, threat intelligence feeds, encapsulate that in the full end-to-end, whether it be coming over into Command Center and ESM. So not only from the real-time detection, but if I'm doing hunting activities, I can marry that information. Okay, give me 1 second. Let me, sorry, I'm in as the wrong user, and that user does not exist. Let me come back real quick. I believe I logged in as the wrong user. So let me log out real quick. and let me log in as an appropriate user. Okay, now I'll be coming back into the command center. So this is the real-time detection. As you can see, there's a number of activities going on. Dashboards are built up. Again, you know, we have a view of the default content out of the gate is all mapped to MITRE. As an analyst, you know, we see these, you know, the various tactics and techniques or sub-techniques that are available. I can very visually look at, well, here's where I've seen the exploitation and removal of services going on. Here are the rules that have actually generated it. If I click on the rule, it'll jump me to it. As part of this, I can very quickly also go right out to MITRE and their documentation associated to the various tactics and techniques, so I can get a better understanding of how to respond. Likewise, as part of the coverage, visually, we're able to look at the ecosystem within ESM itself, and what coverage do we have from an operations standpoint. So visually here, red and green is good. Red meaning we've seen activity in the last 2 days. Green means we have coverage, but we haven't seen any activity. Orange is all the content that's in the ecosystem, but is not turned on for whatever reason. And then the black squares all are where we don't have coverage. This is continuously updated and everything along those lines. So it's very quick and easy and powerful to understand where do I need to direct efforts, where do I need to direct my use cases and further development, whether it be acquisition of telemetry in order to satisfy those, or whether it be just on the content development side because the data is already available within the ecosystem, and being able to target how do I address those various techniques to give me full coverage across the board. And again, of course, we have the ability to do active channels and real-time monitoring of all the events that are flowing through the environment, et cetera, that you would typically have within ESM. So with that, I'll come over into here real quick and see that we have a number of active channels available, navigation. Likewise, we can look at it from a FSMA standpoint. We can break down by the various controls and see what's going on within these. So very, very down into the granular level. If we look at the account management, we can just look at privilege account changes. So if there's any activity that we see associated to that within the environment, we would be able to visually see it here. And then of course, we could initiate the appropriate actions. Again, looping back to the SOAR and saying, hey, we want to also start encapsulating this and put some workflow around it, build a playbook so we can automate some of those processes. So it doesn't look like there's any events that we have in association to that. So with that, I'm going to jump back into Fusion. And towards here at the bottom, we have the ability as well. Not only is it about, you know, from an analyst being able to look at this, but from an operations standpoint, we need to know what's going on within topology. So we have a central management interface that can look at the data feeds. We can see, oh, look, there's something over here. We have storage that's getting full on one of the components within the infrastructure. So as an engineering effort, we, you know, from an ops standpoint, we would know that, hey, we have to undertake something to remediate this before it gets to a critical status. We can see what's going on from all of our data feeds that are coming into the environment. What's the status of them? You know, our licensing capacity is easily monitored and available for you to be able to, you know, at a fingertip, be able to pull that information up. And with that, the last part is, I think that's pretty much it. I think I'm through most of it within the platform side. So I'm going to open it up for any questions, any areas that someone wants me to dive into a little bit further. Or John, is there any other clarification points that you want to inquire?
That was great, Keith. Any questions out there? So Keith, I've got one question. As it relates to the playbooks, what's a typical implementation of playbooks at a federal type agency?
So a lot of it is, so the first things we say to target is if you have something that is written down, for example, that you would have a new hire to go learn to do and operate, that's where I would start with building playbooks, right? Because the value proposition is around automating those repeated tasks. So if it's something that you've been able to turn around and say, this is what I want you to do when you see X or Y, then those are the operations that we would look to say, those are the prime candidates for value add right out of the gate. And that frees those resources to go do the other things that you're typically unable to go do. It creates repeatable processes. You're able to then be able to measure the effectiveness or the frequency at which those are being executed. And then lastly, you can then target those higher value playbooks or workflows that you want to create that you haven't been able to get to, right? Because you either don't have the manpower or you don't have the skill set available to you in order to undertake those activities.
That's great guidance. So start with the lowest hanging fruit first.
Absolutely, and there are a number of playbooks that do come out of the box that you can leverage. They may or may not align 100% to what you're looking to accomplish, but they will help accelerate, maybe some of the efforts of what you're trying to achieve.
Very good. Any other questions out there? Well, Kirsten, with that, I think we're done.
Sounds good. We can wrap up 10 minutes early then. Thank you all our presenters. And again, our recordings will be posted on YouTube. So just search ATARG YouTube and you'll see the Zero Trust demonstration presentations listed under a playlist. Does anyone have any questions? Hold on, I'm gonna stop recording.